Germany is turning into a hellhole country. We're no longer safe on our streets. I mean, just go back to 2015, New Year's Eve. There was a mob of 1,000 men ganging up on women, just, being out there celebrating New Year's Eve. Notably in Cologne, it was just dreadful what these women experienced, right?
So saw an echo of that in Paris.
Jordan Peterson recently had Christine Anderson on his podcast, and they talked specifically about Germany and the state of Germany today. I picked up something interesting in the conversation where Christine talked specifically about the incident in Cologne, where over 600 women reported being sexually assaulted by men. Most of those men were from North African countries as well as the Middle East. And the natural conclusion is asylum seekers from that region are bringing crime, violent crime, to an otherwise peaceful country. And I wanted to look into this some more to see if there's an actual linkage between violent crime in Europe, specifically in Germany, and asylum seekers. Now, first, what happened in 2015 was abhorrent. In Cologne, Germany, again, over 600 women reported sexual assaults by men, again, mostly from North Africa and the Middle East. And that is absolutely reprehensible. I can't imagine what those women went through. But I was interested in noting that this was an event that happened in 2015, and Germany has not seen the same event repeated over and over since then, and that's almost 10 years ago to the day. So that tells me that that event is an isolated one-off event, not to demean or denounce what happened, but it's not repeatable. I'm not seeing a correlation between that event and asylum seekers. This despite the number of asylum seekers going up during the same time in Germany. So I wanted to look at the data between asylum seekers and crime, and what I found was interesting. First of all, crime generally in Germany has been on a downward trajectory. You can see in this graph that it actually spiked during the mid-90s and then suddenly went down as we entered the 2010s. Now, research is still divided on why, but one could assume that as a result of the Berlin Wall coming down, the reunification of Eastern and Western Germany probably played a factor. The other thing that I wanted to look at was where immigrants are coming from for Germany. Now, I went in with the assumption that the majority of immigrants were from North Africa, the Middle East, so the global South in general. But what I found was that the majority of asylum seekers and immigrants are from many places, including Romania, Bulgaria, and more recently, Ukraine. And so we probably see more Eastern European immigrants to Germany, perhaps, than other parts of the world. And so when we start thinking about immigration in Germany, it's much more multifaceted and complex than we might think. But this is where the data gets really murky and something that we should all be very cognizant of. The government doesn't break down crime and violent crime based on your status in the country. So we actually don't know for certain if more violent crime is being committed by asylum seekers in Germany because the data just isn't there that's being collected. Now, I do think that perhaps this can lend itself to people being like, well, the government's purposely not doing that because they don't want to show that story. Maybe that would need more like data testing and all that other stuff. But to point to what happened in Cologne is naturally suggesting a broader trend of violent crime and asylum seekers from a particular part of the region. We already know that asylum seekers are not from a particular part of the region, and we already know that crime in Germany is actually on a downward trend. But what we don't know is if there's a linkage between crime and asylum seekers, specifically from North Africa and the Middle East. Now, I also want to talk about the language that Christine Anderson is using and others. Douglas Murray as well. They use these language like mass invasion or, Europe's identity is being lost, etc. And immigration is just a reality for Europe, North America, etc. The birth rate is declining in these countries. And so immigration is happening. And governments are thinking like, how are we going to get more taxpayers? I think it's an economic play by the government for sure. But I was really surprised in this video that Jordan Peterson known for his academic rigor on many topics. When you look at some of his older videos, he'd openly talk about his academic rigor. When it comes to this, he didn't challenge Christine at all. He didn't point to, like, can you talk to me about some of the data gaps, etc. And this is what I've noticed about Jordan Peterson on topics where he has his own personal opinions, where he may even has his own personal bias. He doesn't apply that academic rigor to those topics as well. In fact, he openly doesn't. And I think it's because he knows that the more inflammatory the language, the more clicks he's going to get, the more likes, the more shares, the more, it's a revenue generating thing. But I'm surprised to see that from Jordan. I was hoping that he'd push a little bit to Christine on some of the assumptions that were being made. And I didn't see that at all. And so to conclude, what I've seen is that violent crime and crime in general in Germany is much lower today than it was even 30 years ago. And that younger people are not committing crime. It's actually violent crime and crime are being committed by older people in Germany. And also, we're not tracking statistics on crime by asylum seekers, which is a major gap. But also, unless you look into this, you'd assume what Christine is saying is accurate or inaccurate. We can't assume that these narratives are true. We have to actually unpack and push back when assumptions are being made. And usually those assumptions are based out of a singular or a series of events. But even if they were a series of events, it may not be reflective of a broader trend. So data integrity is so important. I just wanted to do a quick video on that. Again, if you're liking my content, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let me know what you think. I'll leave links to everything that I found on this as well, so you can check it out for yourself. Thanks, everyone. I'll catch you in the next one.